All right, welcome to another edition of the Three Stooges Podcast. This is our football grand finale, but not starting next week. There's always still football on the brain, but we'll have a lot of basketball next week as we break down teams to look for, players to look for throughout the Sac-Joaquin section as we dig in headfirst in high school sports in the Interscholastic Federation of California Interscholastic Federation, CIF. Joe Davidson, longtime with Sacramento Bee. Chris Jackson, longtime with West Coast Preps. Jordan Georgeson, longtime Gold Country Media, cover this region inside and out. We go by the Stooges because we are not quite there emotionally. We're working on it, the three of us. But we do take our job seriously if we don't take ourselves seriously. And we will talk about the CIF State Championships and what happened. We had a great showing for the Sac-Joaquin section, which is all through the Sacramento area and down through the Merced, Turlock area, Sonora, and including a northern section team in Winters and Yolo County won. There was a brawl that really sullied one day of the event. We'll break that down basically with the theme of grow up, be better, because you won't get invited to these things again. We'll talk about that. Alonzo Carter is the new Sacramento State football coach. Press conference on Thursday. We'll break down who he is. Some thoughts on, is this the right choice? What about Troy Taylor? What's going on with all of that? Sounds like Sacramento State's filling up its schedule fast, which is good because a week ago they only had 4 games. But all kinds of stuff there. And Jordan, we're going to toss over to you, sir, and you could explain the headgear and the hoodie as I will explain mine. And we know what Chris Jackson is. It's some kind of insignia, otherwise known as West Virginia. That's his roots. But Jordan, you got the floor. I mean, tell us, defend yourself with your garb.
Well, I mean, first off, we gotta the hat's nothing special. It's just a blank hat that I ordered because I found one on Amazon that's built for people with big heads, and unfortunately, that I fall into that category. um, and I passed it down to my kids. They're both 99th percentile in head size. So I'm sorry if you guys want a good story about head size. When we were growing up, my youngest brother had the biggest head out of all of us. We used to, jokingly call him Jimmy Neutron. He's a freshman at UNR now, so I can make fun of him a little more guilt-free. But we would watch him run down the street, and you would just see kind of his head tilt like that, and it would just weigh him down and wipe out. And so gotta shout out to the big head people with that, and finding a hat that fits is a lifesaver. The sweatshirt I'm wearing because I feel like I'm an honorary member of the Raiders because I certainly scored as many points as them yesterday. So I've gotta really rep the team and figure out I keep wearing Raiders gear and they keep losing and they never find a way to get that number one pick. So maybe I just need to keep wearing that Raider gear and finally will them to the top pick and hope that they draft someone they can finally develop.
Well, and here's another theory, and Chris Jackson will support me on this. And we never just call him Chris, we just call him Chris Jackson. It's just one nice, smooth name. But the hat is blank on purpose for Jordan because that's what the Raiders have represented this season. A lot of nothing, still a work in progress. Maybe something will get there besides the big L. Maybe he'll say number one, as in the number one pick in the draft. We're not sure. But Chris, what do you got on your lid? And it probably matches the hoodie.
I
This
have
is
a
all
West,
about fashion when we
yeah,
start off the Three
it's
Stooges
all
podcast.
about fashion on a Tuesday morning. I got a West Virginia hat. I got a little Warrior sweatshirt, just
There
but
you go.
one team always disappoints me. One I can't complain as a Warriors fan, growing up a Warriors fan. I've got 4 titles. Like who am I gonna I see all these people complaining, oh my goodness, it's so tough right now. We got 4 titles in our lifetime. Like,
He
yeah,
says, he's counting all of
let's
his rings
be
and
okay. And but there was some talk that the Raiders could develop a guy, and guy's not a bust. I got to see it to believe it. Number one picks usually don't work out for the Raiders. I'm just saying. Drafted quarterbacks number one in the past. It didn't work out. We drafted second round quarterbacks. Derek Carr got a lot of slander, even though he shouldn't. It's the winningest quarterback we've had in quite some time. Just saying.
It was never the problem.
Maybe Derek Carr can come back from retirement. Maybe there's a little juice left, although they can't block, so I'm not really sure
I'll
if
start loosening my arm.
yeah, you
yeah,
should.
there you go.
It
Get
can't be
loose, get
it can't be any
get
worse.
loose. Yeah. And so my lid, it looks like it could be the Colorado Rockies, which would be patently false. It's the Casumas River College Hawks, my alma mater years ago, and they had me speak years ago, like 2012 or 13, when they opened the new baseball facility, and they gave me this, and then I put it in a box. And about 2 years ago, I found it, and so I enjoy it. That's why we wear the lid, an old flashback. But also in today's show, we're going to break down the Three Stooges podcast players of the year. We're going to have a player of the year overall, an MVP, medium or large school player of the year, medium school player of the year, small school player of the year, really small school player of the year, offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, and we're going to kick around some coach of the year ideas. It's just a great way to cap this amazing season of high school football. Jordan, let's go. Let's break down some of the games. The Sac-Joaquin section did really well in the state finals. The Open Division has always been dominated the last 7, 8 years by the Southern California Heavies. It happened again, but the other divisions, this section, the Sac-Joaquin section, and even the northern section, does just represents really well. But one of our heavies in our section did lose a Division 4 AA game. The Sutter Huskies lost to Barstow of the Southern Section 17-7, but not a bad season by any measure for Sutter and that great coach, Coach Reynolds. Jordan, I think it just finally ran out of gas.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, those of you that have been tuning in to this podcast for a while, Chris, Joe, you guys know I've been high on Sutter all year. I said back in July, I think they have, a state championship type of talent on that team this year. And what's crazy, I think, first off, is when you think of all the great teams that have come through Sutter, even when they were in the northern section, this is their first ever state championship game appearance. And I think that's a crazy thing to think of with all the athletes they've had there, with all the Division 1 talent they've had come through there. They've had some great teams. I think one that shows you how hard it is to get to this level and get to these CIF state bowls and just have this sustained success. I was talking to our good friend of the program, Stephen Bryla, who covers this Sutter team extensively. And he said, the big message from Reynolds after the game was that no matter what you guys feel right now, you have made it further than any team in Sutter's entire history. And that's over 100 years of history. I mean, just a tremendous football history. The fact that this group has made it further than anyone else, that's something to hang your hat on. And I mean, really just an incredible run. It was a tale of two halves. Sutter kind of controlled the first half, but this Barstow team goes and scores 17 unanswered points in the second half to win it 17-7. They really did a lot of it on the ground. Nicholas, I'm probably going to butcher this last name, Nicholas Gowa, 23 carries, 137 yards. Big game for him, but just the defense, I think, was the story of this one. And holding this Sutter team to 7 points. But again, the Huskies getting to this point made a tremendous season to go from losing to Casa Roble and then coming back and beating them in the playoffs, finally getting over that hump and winning the section championship that you've gotten so close with these last couple of years. How about that win on the road over Hillmar, 48-14? I know the people have always said, Sutter struggles with those 209 teams. Well, they didn't this year. And then Ferndale, too. Going up to play a team that outscored its first opponents like 4,986 to nothing in the first 3 games of the year, or whatever it was. I mean, that was a high-powered offense. Didn't give up a point until Halloween. They were averaging something like 50 or 60 a game to hold them to 7 on the road. And I mean, we talked about it last week, the graphic that they had, the Road Warriors traveling the way that they did, and Sutter wouldn't have it any other way. Unfortunate that they ended up on the wrong end of this one, especially on a year that NorCal did so well. But we've talked about all the time, it's all gravy when you get to this point of the state tournament or of the, NorCal Bowl state tournament in basketball. You never know what the luck of the draw is going to be. You never really know how NorCal and SoCal in these divisions are going to stack up against each other, because it's just a lot of it is kind of playing a guessing game with this stuff and going off ratings and rankings, but you never know how it's going to shake out. And, it just didn't fall their way. They just ran out of gas, but a tremendous Sutter team, nothing to be upset about. 13-2, just a great season for them. They avenged one of their only losses. And, who knows, if they saw Barstow again next weekend, they could have avenged that one as well.
Great, well said. It really starts with coaching in the high school level. And there's a great one at Sonora. Chris Jackson, you were there. You saw them so much of the season. Size them up, just for in case people don't remember. We got a lot of podcasters who tune in just to see what's going on and get a pulse. But the Sonora Wildcats What did they do in section play? What did they do in competitive equity move? And how did they finish their season? And who's their coach?
No, I got a bone to pick with some people first. We're going down there, hearing from some people down there, covering the SoCal region. Does Sonora have a chance? Does Sonora have a chance? Oh yeah, Sonora had a chance. And guess what? Sonora came in and whipped some butt once again. Mountain Misery won 35 to 10. I mean, they controlled
Mountain
that.
Misery.
Yeah, they controlled that game from start to finish. They didn't do the whole walk down the mountain this time, the steps this time, but it didn't matter. The way they came out, just locking arms, calm, stoic, poised, just looked confident, right? And they just gashed them. Cash Byington was everywhere, broke up passes, had a fourth down tackle, multiple tackles for loss, ran for a touchdown. Brody Spear had a 67-yard touchdown run. Tommy Sutton with a wrap on one hand, still scored 3 times in the second half. Defense held its own. But what we were hearing, some people said Sonora didn't have a chance. So we went down there. Sonora went down there. I heard that from some Southern California media, I'm just gonna say. Said Sonora didn't have a chance. And guess what? Sonora won again. Yeah, they're a pretty darn good small school, right? I know that there was a conversation on an elevator saying, telling Sonora who Rio Hondo Prep is. Well, I think Sonora just told the whole world who the heck the Sonora Wildcats are. Kirk Lifton's team goes undefeated, back-to-back state champs. This group's played together for a long, long time. A lot of kids have known each other since they were little kids. They've got that toughness, but they've also got that word resilience in them because Kirk Clifton's brother tragically passed away last year after a 9-year battle with cancer. They had another former teammate who passed away in a car accident, and they have carried those legacies for over a year and a half as they've made these two incredible runs. And those guys were at the forefront of what they talked about. Players, Coach Clifton was tearing up talking about what this group of kids has meant. I asked, what has this group of kids meant to you to get through all of this? And said they're the best kids you could ever have. And he wanted to make sure, even after he just told them he loved them after that game, it's like, you know what? I need to tell them I love them one more time. Sonora's got that team, and I'm glad the whole world, and I'm glad Southern California and some people got to see who Sonora is.
It's really well sung. Another small team that did some great things out of the Sac-Joaquin section. Calaveras had some lean seasons in recent years, but wins the state 5A championship over Bishop Union 42-21. So small school pride all the way through the 209 down south. I'm going to touch on the Winters Warriors of Yolo County. I always like to say rural Yolo County. It's a small school that's big on pride, so similar to the schools we've just talked about. Coached by an alum, Daniel Ward. His mother, ever so proud, Julie, wears his Letterman's jacket to games over the years. He graduated in 1999. That's what kind of small town pride there is. A week ago on Saturday, Winters was playing in O'Neill's, California. I have to say it all in one word, O'Neill's, California, since we've never heard of O'Neill's. It's by Yosemite and Fresno, and they won a game in the fog, the Winters Warriors did. The same time that the Winters town had a downtown parade. It was the Winters Downtown Tractor Parade. So that tells you what kind of small school we're talking about, rural farming community. And so now I think they need to have a parade for the winners football team. And so the 6A game played the Morse Tigers of San Diego won 28-7. Winners did, and it could have been 35-7 because they took a knee at the end of the game on the goal line. And when I saw the Morse Tigers before the game, it looked like the Grant Pacers. They had a drum line up in the stands. They looked the part of athletic, fast, big in the trenches, and I thought, oh my, Winters may be up for a real challenge here because Winters looks like a small school. You get the slightly built guys. They're all tough and formidable, but they didn't look as fast. Don't judge a book by its cover. And guess who made the plays right from the start was Winters. And the visiting home stands was full of Winters people, including a marching band, cheerleaders. Just really, really cool. And Lane Brown was terrific again. He's a 3-year starting quarterback, 2,000 yards passing, 2,000 yards rushing in the same season. Mark Tennis of Cal High Sports thinks it's only 4 other guys have ever done that in state history. So that's doing some great work. And so that was really cool. We're going to touch on a couple others here, but since we're in a small school, we're going to kick this around. We like to have rants on this show. And we all, I think, are going to combine on this rant. But the 7A game, the Division 7A game, Balboa of San Francisco beat South El Monte 42-8. That was only part of it. There was no ceremony. There was no post-game ceremony in the sunshine at Buena Park High School to award the champions and hand out hats because it was canceled because the players couldn't be mature enough to avoid getting into a brawl. Are you kidding? If you continue to do that kind of immature behavior, you won't be invited to these things. The CIF section commissioners have that authority and could put them on sanctions for this. And I pulled up as just as that was going on on the field, and then it spilled into the parking lot with parents. I pull up, and an SUV pulls up like a scene right out of a movie, and four doors open up, and all of these big, large men jumped out, including two of their wives, and they all had their fists balled, and they were trying to charge into the parking lot. And CIF officials and security had to hold them off, said police are on their way, you are subject to arrest. They wanted to get into the parking lot and brawl. Um, Never mind that they illegally parked, right, pretty much on the curb and all that. But just this is what it is. Nice job for the kids. An emphatic thumbs down. Jordan, you have seen little sprinklings of behavior and stuff over the years, but not sure we've seen this kind of chaos. It's a bad look. You're on a big stage. Act like you've been there. None of those teams acted like they belong there. One of the section commissioners from the Bay Area chewed out and just gave it to the Balboa players and said it was embarrassing. Got to be better. We have to be better. Chris, you comment in a minute, but Jordan, you go first.
Jordan,
Sorry, I was on mute right there.
wow, Jordan, do you
It
understand
was
technology?
it was
I
Jordan's
do.
best stuff when
I'm
he was
not the
muted.
best, but technology is only as smart as its user, and sometimes my CTE doesn't quite rattle me enough. But we talked about it a few times where this state weekend and these championship weekends sometimes just bring out the worst in some people and the ugliest in some people, and a lot of it is because these are programs that weren't used to losing games. They're not used to being on the other end of it. And a lot of times they don't necessarily handle it as well as I think a lot of people would like or that they would like to think. Um, and I've seen a few videos of this brawl. I don't necessarily know who started it. I wasn't there to see it. But I mean, when you see the comments too, and everyone's pointing at who started it, well, when it gets to the point that it's spilling into the parking lot, we're calling the game, we're not having trophy ceremonies. It doesn't matter who started it. There's enough fault to go around to know that everyone is on the hook for this. I mean, the fact that we had, parents allegedly trying to run people over with their cars in the parking lot as a part of this brawl is just ridiculous. It doesn't matter who started it when you're trying to commit vehicular manslaughter over a high school football game. I mean, it's sad to see, especially, a program like Balboa that's been there before, that's synonymous with getting to these state championships. Just everyone has to be better. And I'm not going to, the kids are going to be the kids. And yes, they're going to have some emotions run high. These are emotional games. Tempers are going to flare. That happens. It's part of the sport. But it's up to the adults in that situation to remain calm as well. And I think a lot of this, and the reason this got so out of hand, was because the adults at hand did not remain in control and allowed it to spill into this. And the fact that we had people pulling up to go join the fight, and I don't know what's worse. I mean, there's pulling up to join the fight, but did the guy even have his hazards on when he parked, Joe, or was he just pulling up in a red lane and just getting out I mean, what are we doing here? That there's bikers that could be run over by this.
He pulls right up into the red, which is for like ambulances and emergency, and they just piled out. And I'm going to just give you a visual. Big stout guys, and they got out, and and they had to be held off because they were balled up fists, ready to go. What are you going to? You're going to go charge into the parking lot and settle the score? It was just stunningly disappointing. And Balboa was a feel good story, was a feel good story out of San Francisco. It's always cool to see public schools do something big and cities. And bad look, bad look. There's no the CIF has a motto: pursuing victory for honor. This was pursuing haymakers with no honor. Pretty bad. And Chris, same thing. For an otherwise great showing for Northern California, this was the black eye that shouldn't have happened. And that school for its football program is facing sanctions, nothing official, but it's been discussed, and they're subject to not have invites again. For they can do that. They get somebody else, so that's the risk you're paying.
And that sucks too because the Balboa's history they've done recently, odds are they're going to have more teams and more great athletes that deserve this opportunity. And this overshadows you winning the state championship and, quite frankly, mollywopping the other team. It was, I think, a 42-8 final score. But it takes away from everything. It takes away from the coverage. It takes away from the celebration. There's no more trophy ceremony. What is everything that gets written reported on from this game now? Get some about the game, but mainly now, unfortunately, about the fight and what happened after the game. There were scenes our James Dalpino covered the game in depth. He was there, wrote about it. Check that out. But you had Balboa players yelling at administrators, teammates yelling at teammates, tensions, like you guys said, spilling into the parking lot post game between families and fans. Enough where police were called. You had the San Francisco Assistant Commissioner Melvin Landry condemn the actions of the players post game, and that pissed some people off because some people said he wasn't wrong, but there's a time and place for that too. So then there was anger about him addressing the team at that spot at that time. So there's a lot of different things here. You know, the CIF is discussing it. We'll see what comes about of this. Will there be sanctions? Will there not be? It's unfortunate. It's sad to see such a once in a lifetime moment for kids, for families to experience winning a state championship like this be overshadowed to where you don't get that trophy ceremony. You don't get that to where right away you get the trophy ceremony, you're getting those newspapers that the CIF now made this year, and you're getting the hats there, and you get to just show the world and flash photos with that, right? And everybody's taking photos of you with that. You're getting on TV, you're getting interviews, everything else, and that gets taken away because of this. But I don't even know if this is my rant. I think it's just my rant is the misinformation that we've had going around about a lot of things when it comes to reporting. There are many great reporters out there, and these two in this call next to me, they don't never have misreporting. That's right, because they are big J journalists, but we have had some misreporting about Ryder Lyons won't sign today, unlikely to sign. He signs. Okay. We had misreporting about Sonora already had newspapers printed out for that. No, the CIF handed that to every single team. Don't just post that stuff without knowing. And then there's also been misinformation of the Sac-Joaquin section had the workaround that bowl game winners could make a NorCal Bowl and a State Bowl because that is not how it works. The Sac-Joaquin section playoff format is top 8 teams are in the playoffs. There are other teams in that play for a bowl game and that ends their season. There is no workaround. There is, I think there's a lot of this culture that wants to be first to everything. Oh, Ryder Lions won't sign today. But you talk to the kid and the coach himself and talk to the college coaches at that school, right? Who's the sourcing there? That doesn't make any sense. Where are we getting misinformation about workarounds? Where are we getting misinformation about this and that of Sonora printing the stuff out? No, the CIF made it. That team photo was from the start of the year, and the CIF had that to every single kid. That's why every single kid's getting this and taking photos with it, right? So it's just there's a lot of misinformation being spread around today. I think some of it too now is everybody can quote unquote call themselves a reporter or a journalist on Twitter, right? And claim that. But there's got to be standards here, and I think some of it's being lost, and there's some bias that we unfortunately saw. Joe and I saw down in SoCal this weekend too. Probably gonna ruffle some feathers with what I just said, but it has to be said because Sonora is the one that had to deal with it and hear it about misinformation and this and that, and Folsom's had to deal with it hearing misinformation, this and that. It's not fair. It's not fair to the people you cover. Do your job, do it accurately, do it well, work hard.
That's exactly right. Not hard, and and we'll throw it right back at you, Chris. You do a great job. You work it, and some of these guys, these guys with their erroneous reports and social media posts, they won't apologize. It's like, well, that's just their view. And they want to root everything into disrespect. Oh, there's the Sonora Wildcats of Tuolumne County handing out replica newspaper things that they won. It's so disrespectful. No, they all got it. Pay attention. Ask around. It's just working too hard to I don't know, make a statement. We talked about this last week where, five-star guys getting bumped down to three stars or four stars. Absurd. But I'll tell you one thing that we could all agree on. Brody Rudnicki is a three-star now. I'm endorsing him for a five-star. I think Chris Jackson is. I think Jordan Georgeson is. And
Hey, can he start for the Raiders too, Brody? Can you please start for the Raiders? I'll
yeah,
take you
for
right now.
Sac State, and so give him a year, then he'll be ready for the Raiders. But he is the backup quarterback who has played like a champion. He's only a junior, which is great for Folsom, which is unfortunate for the rest of the CIF in general. There's probably people already insisting he'll be 20 years old next fall, that he doesn't go to class on campus. We hear all those wild things. There's something called Folsom fatigue. Folsom football rose to power in 2010, won its first state championship. Chris Richardson, Troy Taylor, the coaches, Daniel Graves, National Player of the Year, Sacramento Bee Player of the Year, quarterback. The other night they won again, and so now they are 6-1 in CIF State Championship games. That is an incredible run. Second state championship for Coach Paul Doherty, who always talks about the foundation that Troy Taylor and Chris Richardson built. He has done his job with all kinds of pressure. Chris and I have talked about this, where he's not a big fan of game day. He much prefers strength and conditioning in the off season. He was positively giddy after the Reardon win when Brody Rudnicki came in for an injured Ryder Lyons, the five-star quarterback. He's five-star. He didn't lose a star because he got injured, though probably some people wanted to do that. Um, because they don't have any marbles in their brain. And so then last week, so Division One double A, it is the Folsom Bulldogs, Cathedral Catholic, San Diego. Chris, you were there, I were there. The game, the what we could see amid the fog, was another Brody excellence. What did Brody do this time? Did Ryder Lions play? How cool was all of that? What happened and why was it so significant outside of the fog?
The dream scenario for Folsom was to get Ryder Lions in for the last couple of snaps and get that kneel down. They wanted them in the box score for one, but two, they wanted the kneel downs, and they got both, right? The second to last drive, Ryder Lyons comes in. He even hands the ball off, and then he keeps it himself on a fourth down. It was a turnover on downs. Who cares? Ryder Lyons got in the box score in a state championship, his last ever high school game, and then he got the two final kneel downs. You could see how much this meant to him. It was cool watching him even just enter the field before the game, as I could see him making sure to go to the side and high five each cheerleader with a smile on his face, just showing appreciation. And you could tell right before he came in for those final kneel downs, helmet on the sideline, kind of behind everybody, definitely kind of soaking it all and realizing this is it, right? This is somebody that said he'd love to coach at Folsom someday, somebody that said he'd love to raise his family someday and Folsom, and that dream for him, that dream for Folsom came true on Friday night, where yes, it was 42-28, but it was 42-14 late, and Folsom ran away with this thing quick. Scored the first three drives of the game, went up 21-0, and it never felt in doubt. Cathedral Catholic's five-star honor Falave Johnson. He's a five-star safety, a great running back. I think had 260 rushing yards. He got his, but they didn't get much else of anything. Folsom's defense, Paul Doherty said post-game, defense has really been what's carried this program in his tenure, right? They've had great offenses, great quarterbacks from Tyler Tremaine in the Doherty area. I think the start of the Doherty area was Tyler Tremaine to Austin Mack to Ryder Lyons. And now we got Brody Rudnicki coming up too. But they've had great defenses with Daniel Chavez, Theo Griley, Elijah Gulowicz. The defense this year, Jason Hill, Lua DeBerry, Tay Kendrick, Daniel Eagleton, Travis Beatty. Those last two had interceptions. They played super well. I think Cathedral Catholic completed 5 or 6 passes all night. A Big Ten quarterback commit. They really just had him out of rhythm all night. Pressure, making him go off balance and intercepting those two passes. And then Brody Rudnicki ran for over 160 yards. Just tremendous. And even though in the fog it's hard to see, timing shows, chemistry shows. He knows where Rob Larson's going to be. They've thrown together for a long time and saw it on that touchdown run, right? Where puts it on the perfect spot. Rob Larson goes up with Probably the smoothest hands in America, gets a touchdown. I think that made it 14-0, and then Folsom was running away. That senior class, Folsom had got to get a second state title with Jamison Powell, Isaiah Williams, Ryder Lyons, all those guys. But Folsom's future, it's going to be pretty freaking good too, with Rudnicki coming back, Larson coming back, Joseph Ironman, running back, is going to be healthy. Bambino comes back. I think Osias Bolton comes back, and Daniel Eagleton comes back. Travis Beatty comes back. Louis DeBerry comes back. Tay Kendrick comes back, right? I know I named like 9 guys, and I know there's plenty of others that are coming back that are going to be awesome talents there too. But Folsom's got it going, right? They have every shot, every opportunity to play in the spot again in 12 months. But for now, celebrate this. They absolutely dominated. The fog had nothing to do with it. Folsom just dominated from start to finish. They were the better team. They were blocking better, throwing the ball better, running the ball better, defending at a much higher rate. And it showed. It showed on the scoreboard. Yes, like I said, it was 42-28, but Joe, you were there. It was not a 42-28 ball game for people that were there.
No, it was not even close. I think it was 42-7 when Folsom started pulling all the starters. It was a credit to Cathedral Catholic to keep fighting. What was not a credit to Cathedral Catholic was hearing all those kids chirp and taunt and try to rattle the Bulldogs before the game, during the game, late in the game when they're getting smoked. That's high schools. I mean, we see it in college and the pros too, but after a while, you got to look at the scoreboard and kind of realize maybe it's time to just mute it. On and on and on. But good recap there. In a moment, we're going to break down all of our players of the year, coaches of the year, different divisions, the large school, medium school, all those things. We're going to have names galore. I'm going to throw out a tribute to Tony Franks, the classy, fun, spirited coach for St. Mary's of Stockton. This guy never gets rattled. He's just so low key, so poised. He was emotional after St. Mary's won in a thriller of a game, 27-24 over Bakersfield Christian out of the Central section. That team was 14-0 coming in. The Bakersfield Christian team was. St. Mary's had 2 losses, to one to De La Salle, who was in the open division for Northern California, and the other one to the Oak Ridge Trojans of the Sierra Foothill League. Got better, just got better. We saw what St. Mary's did in the section championship game at Hughes Stadium. Terrific, long, sustained drives to salt that game away. That was terrific coaching, great execution, and more of the same against Bakersfield Christian. It came down to a field goal, a 25-yard or so field goal for Bakersfield Christian. And I think, Chris, you and I looked at each other. We're in the Saddleback College press box down in Orange County, and I said, this isn't going to be easy. It's kind of a tough angle. He missed it. And which kind of helped ease the pain of a fumble at midfield for the St. Mary's Rams when they just needed to take a knee. And there's people in the press box. Oh, you got to be smarter than that. Take a knee. You're not in shoulder pads, so sit down and quiet over there. And these kids are competitors. They're going to keep fighting for extra yards. So that's another mini rant. We don't like to hear people in the press box admonishing high school kids. And if you're
And it's,
better, then go down there and hit the sled at halftime. Otherwise, just mute it. It's just
and
absurd.
this may sound weird, but it's sometimes it's obvious to see who's been a competitor and who hasn't, right? If you're a competitor, we're a competitor, whatever it is, you're always going to go full out. You're in a state championship game. Every extra yard counts. I think he got hurt on the play too, and to add
Yeah,
to
they're wired.
yeah, and to
They're
add to,
wired.
and I know that
Wired to compete.
kicker's gotten some flack for missing that field goal, but there's nothing harder than the right hash mark. Really close, right? 23-yard field goal, the right hash mark. That's not an easy kick. You would much rather be 10, 15 yards back from that right hash mark to then get that angle in. And then under that pressure too, that's hard of a kick as it gets. That loss isn't on the kicker. It goes into that situation and he's in the tough spot to where you got to kick a 23-yarder from the right hash mark. And that's a tough kick for college and NFL kickers to make too. I've seen guys at that level miss that. So,
Oh,
right.
it's really, you feel for the kid, and you're right, Chris, and it's not on him. But not only was this a great win for the St. Mary's Rams of Stockton. The school's been around for since 1876, so there's some milestone seasons here. Tony Franks is a graduate of the school. He's a 240 game winning coach. He's the active section leader. for most wins. He's not going anywhere. But this is also a great win for the city of Stockton, which for decades has to defend its image of a bad part of America. And there are some bad parts of that town. There's a lot of good parts of that town, and there's a lot of good people, including the St. Mary's Rams, the players, the coaches, the faculty, the administration. And Tony Franks talked about that, the coach. He said there's violence and sad, unsettling things in every community in America. And this was a feel-good win for those kids in that town. And what I'm being specific to, on November 29th, the same time that St. Mary's was beating Granite Bay for the Sac-Joaquin Section Division II championship, there was a shooting in Stockton that shattered a children's birthday party, and several kids were killed, and 15 others were hurt. More than 50 rounds were fired, gang related. During the game the other night, when St. Mary's is winning this game against Bakersfield Christian, the Stockton street gangs held a truce to talk about peace in wake of the deadly shooting. And so there's progress there. So that's a feel good stuff. And we try to report with a big picture view. We like to talk about a big picture view because as much as these games are important for the players and the school, it's also important for their communities, and they represent the communities and all those kind of things. All right, now it's Three Stooges Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, all those things. We're going to kick it around, including Coach of the Year. But why don't we start from the smallest of the small, and we'll move all the way up. So our really small Three Stooges Podcast Player of the Year for high school football, Sac-Joaquin Section. Jordan, you have the floor. Who is it? Why is it? And what did he do?
That's someone that you guys may have heard us talk about on this show, and that is Vincent Navarro of Forest Hill High School. He had 2,700 yards, averaging 245 rushing yards a game, 25 touchdowns. Picked up that Simpson University offer right after the section championship loss to Mira Loma. And, I know they were on the losing end of that, but if you look at some of his stats from this season, I mean, he had two back-to-back 400 plus yard games. He had the 433 yards against Florin, 446 yards against Vacaville Christian. Even in the section championship loss, he was held to 145 yards, which is still 4.5 yards a carry. And guess what? That 145 yards, that was his lowest total all season. So just a tremendous player there. He had that 55-yard completion against Mira Loma as well. Got it done in the passing game when they needed him to. And then defensively too. I mean, he was a stud on the defensive end. He was a starting linebacker for the Wildfires. Ended up with 101 tackles this season, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 4 interceptions too. So he really did it all for Forest Hill this year. Really a part of the resurgence there. Led that team to the playoffs for the first time, and I think it was 11 years. First section championship appearance in 14 or 15 years, something like that for the school. Well deserved for him, and a kid that if he ends up at Simpson, Simpson's getting a steal in him because I think he is a kid that is going to prove at the next level that he belongs and should be playing a higher level of college football.
Well said. And he is a rolling bowling ball of a player. Simpson College, a small college in Northern California in the Redding area. You're right. There's a guy who could, it just shows it's hard to get scholarship guys. All right, I'm going to go with our Three Stooges podcast, Small School Player of the Year, Lane Brown. We just talked about him. Winters Warriors of rural Yolo County of the Northern Section, quarterback, 3-year starter, 26 wins the last 2 years. His coach said, Daniel Ward said, that's more wins than any other team in California in the last 2 years that he believes. Why would he know? How would he know? Because he looked at it. That's how proud he is. I'm not sure how many wins for the Sonora Wildcats the last 2 years. So, anyways, it's way up there. 3-year varsity guy, 2,000 yards passing, 2,000 yards rushing, same season. One of the few people to ever do it. The only one in Northern Section history to do it. Lane Brown was big in a state championship game. He had 4 touchdowns, passing and rushing. And then he played basketball on Monday night, last night. Winters, this is small school for you guys, did not even have a basketball game until last night because 10 of their players were on the football team. And because it's a small town, small team, and they play similarly sized schools, they said, we can't field a team yet. We're good, no forfeits. But that's what we got there. So Lane Brown, of Winters. All right, medium school player there. Back to you, Jordan. If you could break him down, and he's a familiar name, but he's worth repeating.
Yeah, another one, a very similar type of season to Navarro, but Wes Burford out of Oakdale, California. I mean, we can call this a medium school player of the year, and we'll call it the Lifetime Achievement Award because he is the Sac-Joaquin Section's first 7,000-yard career rusher. 37 touchdowns this season for the Mustangs. I think 5 of those came in that section championship game. He averaged almost 10 yards a carry this year, over 200 yards a game this season and his junior year. I think he's averaged 194 yards a game in his varsity career, 96 career touchdowns, so just shy of 100 there. I mean, if you look at him defensively too, he's been a monster there. 77 tackles this year, 30 tackles for loss. I mean, this guy was just wreaking havoc in the backfield. 7 sacks on 29 hurries. He also got an interception, so he can do it there. Pass deflection, fumble recovery. He caused 2 fumbles. But I think what's most impressive, he's going to the Air Force Academy, and that means, I mean, those of you that don't keep up on some of the college stuff, you are not getting into the Air Force Academy if you aren't the sharpest tool in the shed. I mean, he's got to be a great student in the classroom, just small town running back through and through. I mean, even that section championship game, Wood Creek was honing in on him, and he still found a way to get his. He had 185 yards in that. He had the 3 touchdowns on the ground. I thought he had more than that, and it might be actually. I think that one's not. I'm looking at the wrong game. The Wood Creek one's not in the not max preps just yet, but I knew he had more. I mean, he was just a monster in that game. Wood Creek didn't have an answer for him. Just a tremendous player and really excited to see what he does at the next level because he seems like a kid too that is going to put his name out there and really kind of put Oakdale on the map. And those of you that watch Mountain West football are probably going to see his name called soon.
Yeah, what a good call. And Oakdale, the Mustangs are the 209. They're old school, run the ball, run the ball. You mean you can still do things with by running the ball? Yes, and that's an example. Um, he's the section's all-time leading rusher, as you pointed out. Beat some pretty good names. Ontario Smith of Grant was the Sacramento Bee Player of the Year in the late 1990s. Played in the NFL with the Minnesota Vikings. Was a star for the Oregon Ducks. And then along came Cam Scatabo, familiar name. He's with the New York Giants before he got hurt this season as a rookie. Ria Linda, 2006 through 2008. All-time greats who got surpassed by an all-time great. And having known Ontario Smith and Cam Scatabo over the years, I think they would applaud Wes Burford if they saw film of him, they saw him live, and they knew that their records were surpassed by this guy. They would say that's our kind of runner. So, all right, large school player of the year for the Three Stooges podcast, the 2025. Another guy who runs the ball with power and authority and purpose, Isaiah Ene of Granite Bay of the Sierra Foothill League in Placer County, nearly 1,800 yards rushing, 28 touchdowns. This is a legacy award as well. 4-year starter as a running back in the secondary. He's going to Sacramento State. He's signed his letter of intent. Recently, they're getting a player. They call him the Pied Piper on campus, which means people gravitate to him, not because he's a football player, but because he's a leader and he's a good guy, and people are drawn to that. So kudos to him. All right, let's go to we're going to go a defensive player of the year, offensive player of the year, MVP, and then some coaches of the year. Defensive player of the year is a guy we've mentioned over the years, small school pride, Chris Jackson. Who you got?
Sutter Huskies. Troy Bowens, the 4-star edge rusher, 5-star human being, 5-star leader. What he did on that Sutter defense, absolutely just there was no blocking him, right? You can't block 6'5", 247, 33 tackles for loss in 15 games, 106 tackles, pressured the quarterback 31 times, forced 3 fumbles. I mean, he is an animal of all animals. He's played some tight end as well, but he's got another year, and we've mentioned it before. There were bigger schools that wanted him, and he wanted to stay home. He wanted to stay at Sutter and play for the small school and play somewhere he's always wanted to play in. It's worked out, right? Look at all the offers he's got. He's a top 300 player in America in his class, and obviously a top 300 person in America, just in terms of his overall human being in his class, too. There's no doubt about that. So he checks every box, and he's only getting better. So he's a guy that's going to play on Saturdays, and you know what? I think he's got a chance to play well beyond that, too.
And only a junior. How about that? And he stayed loyal. there were overtures from larger schools all across the Northern California, and you got to come here. And he said, I'm okay right here. Gotta love that. And we've talked about this in person when we're out there in the field, if we're having lunch somewhere on the podcast. If you're a player, it doesn't matter where you go to school because the college recruiters don't care about your strength of schedule. They don't care about any of that stuff. They want or your team ranking. They want to see film where a player pops on film, and they need to see transcripts, his grades. Well, Troy Bounds checks off all the boxes, and you don't have to be at a large school powerhouse to get recruited. You need to have body, ability, size, skill, talent, and those grades. All right, offensive player of the year. Going back to Chris Jackson, offensive player of the year. Here's a guy who Troy Bounds knows of because he's tried to chase him down. So who's our offensive player of the year for the Three Stooges podcast?
Aiden Lopez, Casserole. The Folsom transferred, another one of those great guys from the Folsom legacy, and did for 3,489 yards, 36 touchdowns, 4 picks, completed 71% of his passes. But he's so much more than what the stats show. The arm is tremendous, but so too is the moxie he's got. He's got that it factor, and it shows in a lot of these biggest games. There were murmurs, questions, people telling his family that he should never have been the starter at Casa last year when he supplanted and took over the job from a reigning two-time starter and reigning section champion. And what did Aiden Lopez do? He showed the world who he is, why he's such a great leader, why so many people love to play with him, why people wanted to go to Casa and play with him too. That's the gravitas he has. And he's someone that whether or not football works out someday, I got a hunch it will, but if it doesn't, he's somebody that you could be seen running companies and being a CEO and then some because of that personality, that leadership, that work ethic he's got. I think Joe's muted too.
Joe, you're on the.
It was,
There
it
you
was
go.
my best stuff. That was my best one-liner, and I was muted and operator error. But and Aiden Lopez is another example of how hard it is to get recruited. Geez, he seems to have all the intangibles and a skill set and a great arm and passes, medium, long, whatever. He's tough as nails. It's hard. If we think about how crowded the Sac-Joaquin section is for all the players. We were just in Los Angeles or Orange County and Mission Viejo. Look at all those schools down there. There are thousands of schools in this state, and I think 1,700 high schools. And there's in the southern section down in the LA basin, there are nearly 700 high schools. So it is hard. And that's just for this state alone. But good call there. All right, so I'm going to hit on our MVP, the Three Stooges Podcast Player of the Year MVP. Ryder Lyons, kind of a fulsome five-star quarterback. We've talked about him. He was not healthy for the state championship game, but he got into the game. But I think, yes, results matter. He was the best player on the best team in the Sacramento region in the Sac-Joaquin section. But I think there's something to be said about his legacy. 10,000 career passes, two-time state champion, three CIF section championships, played on four section championship teams, played a little bit as a freshman. But he also did it with a degree of class. He was a good sportsman. He regularly talked about his teammates and his coaches. And on signing day, National Letter of Intent signing day, when they put their pen to paper to make these college commitments binding contracts, he was at the middle of the table. He's kind of the leader. And he had three teammates on the left, three teammates on the right. And he could not praise them enough. He just said, these are my teammates, these are my brothers, they're all excellent. There's some class in all of that. And I asked him and talked to him a little bit later, and how do you handle the pressure? You get heckled and taunted, and he just lets it roll off of his back. And he said, some of it I think is people don't want to see people succeed. And so he handles it. He has documentaries done. He has film crews that follow him. Seems to handle it really well. He's always had straight A's to his credit as long as he's been a student. I think he's going to be a big boost for BYU. He handled the shoulder injury suffered against Reardon, so he couldn't finish out that game. But he was the number one backer for Brody Rudnicki, who's the next great thing at Folsom. There's sportsmanship there. Chris and I saw it from field level after the state championship game. The first two players who hugged each other as after Ryder Lyons came in to take a knee to kind of punctuate that moment, shoulder still bad. The two quarterbacks embraced and they sat next to each other for the team photo. That's sportsmanship. This is an example that you could be the biggest dog in a dog pound, the Folsom Bulldogs in Ryder Lyons, and you can be uh, a proponent of what's right of high school sports. So there's our player of the year. Chris, I'm going to throw it back to you. Who did we agree on for our team of the year? We had so many possibilities, including Winters, including um, St. Mary's of Stockton, including Folsom, all state champions. But who did we decide on and size these guys up? Because we've talked about them plenty, but they're worth one more thumbs up.
Sonora, look at what they've done. Look at that resume. Division 6 school going up to Division 2 A, I should say, not 2 AA, but 2 A for state and winning the whole thing, going 15-0 this year. I think if you look at their schedule, one game decided by 10 points or less. That was at Hillmar, always a tough place to play. Other than that, I mean, just rolled through the competition. 680 to 204. They dealt with injuries. They dealt with Tommy Sutton, their fullback, missing half the season essentially, and they still found a way to get it done, get the job done. And 15 wins that this year, what they did last year, 13 wins, 28 wins over a 2-year span. As good as any in the state, as good as any in America in a 2-year stretch there. Their last loss, you look at it, was all the way back on October 18th at Ripon. The week before, they lost at Houston by 1 point. There was a 2 point try there at the end, and then at Ripon the next week. And since then, have not lost another ball game on the schedule. Now a state champion, a Division 6 school that beat Division 1 Turlock earlier this year. Division 3 Oakdale goes to 2A for state. They beat Wood Creek, a Division 3 team, and then they beat Rio Hondo Prep and dominate a lot of these teams. So Sonora, a great group, great coaches. They've been through adversity, as we mentioned earlier on this podcast. And for them to come together like this, the community support they had, I recommend everybody to at least see one game at Sonora.
Yeah, great venue, great school. When I was a pup at the Sacramento Bee some 30 years ago, 5 years old with tater tots in my mouth, allegedly, Sonora was playing for Section Division 2 championships. And so because it's enrollment based, they're all the way down to Division 6. The point being staying power, just despite declining enrollment, still a mega power. Then competitive equity formula for the state playoffs, they move way up to 2A and 2AA, and they continue winning. It's remarkable. It's a great credit to Kirk Clifton, the coach, an alum of the school, and Mark Tennis, the guru for Cal High Sports, which has done state rankings for more than 50 years, has said that this Sonora team is the greatest small school team in the history of the Sac-Joaquin section. And that is saying something because there's been state champions from Escalon and Hillmar and Denair. And the state championships only started in the modern era in 2006, but there have been great teams. The Hillmar Yellow Jackets of the 219 in this section had a 47 or 48 game winning streak under Coach Jerry Van Langen in the 80s and 90s. And so there's been greatness. So I think from what I've seen over the years, I would endorse what Cal High Sports is saying. It's the greatest small school team and season in the history of this section. So we're going to kick it around now for our Three Stooges podcast. Coach of the Year. We have all kinds of possibilities, including Kirk Clifton. But let's just kick it around. Let's all drop a name here and there, and then we'll finalize it. We could actually all have our own, but guys of note also include Adam Ranking of Roseville, led Roseville to a first section championship since 1987. Alan Berg of Lincoln a couple of years ago, 1 win, 9 losses. This season, nearly flipped it. Tony Franks of Stockton, or St. Mary's of Stockton, state champions. Jesse Collins of Miraloma, an alum of the school, went unbeaten, won the section championship in 8-man. But let's go to you, Jordan. Who's a name that you would endorse for Three Stooges podcast, Coach of the Year for the Sac-Joaquin section?
I mean, I think it's a name that it's a school that we haven't talked about yet in these awards, which is crazy given the year that they've had. But Kyle Stowers over at Wood Creek, the turnaround he's had there. I mean, rewrote that entire offensive playbook and led them to their first section title in school history. Led them to that NorCal game where they just ran into a buzzsaw that was our team of the year in Sonora. But the work that Stowers has done with that program in just 1 year and utilizing those athletes and just kind of changing everything, including the culture around that program, I think that's incredible. It's one of the best things I've seen. I mean, I've told you guys this too, but Stowers was an assistant coach when I was at Del Oro. And when I hear him talk, I want to put on shoulder pads and a helmet again and go run through a wall. I mean, he is that type of motivator. I think he really is throwing his hat into the ring, and just what he's done at Wood Creek. I have no reason to believe that this team's going to take too big of a drop off. I think they're kind of establishing themselves where as long as Stowers is there, they're going to be a football school.
That's excellent. I agree. What he did was remarkable. Great coaching family. Good insight, Jordan, where when he speaks and you can speak from experience, guys get fired up. That's a real connection there. And all right, Chris Jackson, who's a Three Stooges Coach of the Year guy that you like?
I'm gonna go to both the coaches on that Sac-Joaquin Section Division Four championship game. Adam Rankin of Roseville and Jason Stock over at East Union. East Union, its best team since 1989 when Stock was a player at the school, and they've had a lot of coaches these last few years, a lot of 1 year guys, and Stock, the new head coach this year, just trusted, got a great offensive coordinator, play caller, TJ. TJ Gordon, just tremendous, just get the ball to players in space. Don't overcomplicate it with guys like Jackson Fay, JP Abreu, Brandon Kamara at running back, Kirk Simone at quarterback. But what they did, they were just this close to winning the section title. But that run they had, the wins they had to Hansfeld Burgess, it's one and only loss, doing so on the road, and then ranking at Roseville, their first section title since 1987. They dealt with injuries. Mason Cisnara, their quarterback, missed some time. Their top receiver, Aresti JJ Yon, out for some time. Also, shout out to him. He just got announced the Cal Poly offer last night. I know there was word that Cal Poly was showing interest. I spoke with his basketball coach, seeing them against Casa Roble last week. Bobby Ritter, and he had mentioned that he was getting some conversations from some of those FCS schools. Cal Poly then pulls the trigger, offers him, and they were also without the Marcus Gresham, their running back, for some time as well. And they just kept finding a way, played great team football, complimentary football, section champs in a crazy way for the first time since 1987. And they went on the road to McClimon's the next week and gave Mac, who was always a powerhouse, sustained power from Oakland, all they could handle him. Nearly came back there at the end.
No, good job. And so these are good guys too. They're good people and they represent their schools well and they're good for um, student athletes. They're good for a community. So all these good names and Daniel Ward of Winters is another. He's an alumni coach and there's a lot on a coach's shoulder when you're the head coach. And oh, it's just high school football. What's the big deal? Well, it's their world and it's the players that they're coaching and it's their world. And Coach Daniel Ward says that of all the stories that we've been doing on Winters, the superintendent of that district sends it out to all the faculty in the elementary, middle school, high school, because they embrace their small town. And it takes, so, we talk about all these small school coaches, including Ryan Reynolds of Sutter, that you feel it. You feel it when there's pressure. And some of the pressure is self-induced. You're so used to a quality of excellence. You want to keep it going. And the unsung heroes in all of this are often the coaches' wives. They know what they're getting into. It's not just game day. It's a year-round thing, and then they'll all get in the weight room, after the holiday break and start all up, fire up again. So, really impressive. My vote for Coach of the Year for Three Stooges is Paul Doherty of Folsom. And we talked on this a moment ago, the Folsom fatigue. Nobody's rooting for the Folsom Bulldogs in all of those state championship games over the years, in 7 of them since 2010, unless you're from Folsom. When the Grand Pacers were in state championships, Sacramento was rallying behind them. This is Sacramento. This is Sacramento's team. There's so much distaste for Folsom outside of Folsom that everybody's rooting for them to lose. So be it. That means you've arrived, I suppose. De La Salle faced that for years and years and years, and it's a credit to success. But Paul Doherty's real strength is He does a nice job of letting his coaches coach. He um, his real strength is the strength and conditioning program. These guys are in shape, and he has coaches who are working with him on the youth level. And so these kids are growing up with that. And though he's not a big fan of actual game day, he's pretty darn good in games, and he's faced a ton of pressure over the years. You got to be great. You got to be great, and he's proven to be great. And also a good guy, as we touched on that thing, a theme. I think that stuff's important too. None of these coaches that we've mentioned, yeah, they get hot under the collar. They're not getting thrown out of games. They're not. They don't have wild theories. They don't complain. Sometimes it's the assistant coaches. Certainly, the parents complain. The Folsom fans complain more than most anybody. They'll be up 42-0 in a game, and they're complaining in the stands that the CIF's out to get them, and the media's out to get them, and the referees are out to get them. Nobody's out to get you. The team that you're beating 42-0 is trying to get you. So you can imagine how they feel about referees, media, and the CIF. But so, anyways, then we're gonna cap it with that. One little side note here. We just talked about McClymonds, the football powerhouse in the Bay Area in Oakland. Alonzo Carter is the new Sacramento State football coach. He will be introduced formally tomorrow in a news conference on campus at 10:30 a.m. I'll be there to cover that. Excellent reputation as a recruiter, longtime assistant coach, assistant head coach at San Jose State, and the last couple of years down at the University of Arizona, the Wildcats of Arizona. And his time has come. I thought the decision was going to be Troy Taylor, the former Sac State coach. I thought that was the right move in 2019. And Troy Taylor gave Sac State its finest football seasons in the history of the program. It started in 1954. I thought he would be the guy this time. It was close. It was down to him and Alonzo Carter. You can't go wrong with Alonzo Carter. There's going to be pressure on him. You got to get that. I think the schedule is filling up for next season. That helps. Still trying to figure out if they're going to be FBS, FCS independent, where they're going to play. They're going to be at Hornet Stadium on campus. They're going to be at Cal Expo. You need a coach. You need stability. He replaces Brennan Marion, who was hired about this time a year ago and only lasted 1 year. Gets snatched up by the Colorado Buffaloes to be offensive coordinator for Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. So we'll see how it goes. But I do know that Coach Carter has an excellent reputation of a people guy and as a recruiter. Kind of a cool side note is if you Google him, he was a choreographer and lead guy for MC Hammer, including the Can't Touch This. And there's cool video clips where he was busting the move for the San Jose State Spartans after a practice. A lot of those kids didn't know those ties and all that. So he's got some spirit, he's got some personality. And we'll see. And UC Davis, meanwhile, lost in the FCS quarterfinals, end of the line this season for Coach Tim Plow and for Caden Pennick. Let's kick this around as our final topic. And there's already discussion, will Caden Pennick, the pride of Placer County and Del Oro High School, will he go into the transfer portal? And the transfer portal, for those who aren't sure what that is you could jump into the transfer portal and reopen your recruiting and maybe get plucked up by another school. Um, the coach was asked about that after the loss the other day, and he said he'd hope that Caden Pinnick would stick around. I did a big feature on Caden last week, and he talked about how a lot of his growth is tied to his coach. So they have a nice bond. Jordan, you covered him. You saw him. We know how competitive he is. Caden Pinnick wants to seize the world. I hope he stays at UC Davis. You can play in the NFL if you play at the FCS level. He's not a guy known to bounce around. He played at Del Oro his whole career. What are your thoughts? And he's also going to play baseball because he wants to maximize and seize his playing experiences. But I'd like to see him stay.
Did the mute thing again. I think it's going to be an interesting situation with it in terms of I've said it before. I sound like a broken record. I think Caden Pinnick would have been a 4 or 5 star quarterback if he was a few inches taller. Something not really in his control. And I absolutely think he, talent level wise, is a not only an FBS level player. I think he's a Power 4 level player, but he's also a very loyal guy. He could have left Del Oro. There's schools that would have taken him, and he chose to stay there. I think the baseball thing throws an interesting wrinkle into it. His career trajectory, it actually reminds me a lot of Cam Ward, who was the number one overall pick last year. I mean, under recruited coming out of high school, starting in an FCF's program. He started at Incarnate Word, and I think after 2 or 3 years there, ended up going to Washington State. From there, ends up at Miami, and then now in the NFL. I'm not saying, hey, book it now. Caden Pinnock's the number one overall pick. I mean, I certainly think he has Sunday potential, but he's the type of kid where I could see having a similar trajectory of, after a year or two at UC Davis, he ends up going on to a higher level of college football and showcasing it there. And I think I like to think that he's going to stay at least one more year because I know today's college football climate's crazy, but I mean, if he's not entering the transfer portal right now, you're almost kind of already late entering it if you're entering it today, which leads me to believe that he's probably going to stay put for another year. And then kind of work it out there. And then the other thing that's important to remember too, with the transfer portal in this window is UC Davis is on the quarter system, whereas a lot of colleges are still on the semester system. And the people that complain about, oh, why is the transfer portal open when the season's still going and all that? Well, it's because at the end of the day, they're student athletes. The student part comes first, and they need to get these guys all booked into classes for the spring semester. So I do think him being a school of the quarter system could, complicate a transfer portal thing to where I like to think he's going to stay at Davis for another year at the very least, and then kind of move forward from there and, see, because I am sure that there are some FBS schools that are entertaining offers. I mean, you're telling me with, Nevada's quarterback situation right now. I know they've got Reeve Sloan coming in, but I'm sure their mouths would be watering if they found out Caden Pinnock had some interest. I'm sure there's even, some in the Pac-12 or the new Pac-12 that's going to be coming that would be interested in his services. And he certainly has shown that he can play. I mean, he made plays when they played against Washington. He can make plays against big programs. So hey, he's only going to get better. I mean, he was just a redshirt freshman this year. So I think that I'd be surprised if he ends up, at Davis after 4 years, but I feel like we're going to see him in a UC Davis uniform next year.
I agree. I talked to him for a few minutes after uh, not this last game, but the game before then against Rhode Island when he had 5 touchdowns, and he was really excited about playing baseball. And I don't think you commit to playing baseball if you're going to jump in the transfer portal. But and it doesn't mean he doesn't like his current situation. But Chris Jackson, you've covered athletes all through Northern California. Sometimes these guys are so competitive, they want to seize the next big challenge. And the transfer portal can be a great thing for college athletics. It could also not be such a great thing. Sacramento State last season brought in an army of guys through the portal. Be interesting to see what Alonzo Carter does with that. Does he retain a lot of the guys? Does he go back to the portal? But the portal is not going anywhere. It is here to stay for better or for worse. Chris Jackson.
Yep, it is. And I think UC Davis would be the first to admit to you that Caden Pinnock is worthy of bumping up a level, right? I just the way it is. I think they know that competitors, they want to play at the highest level. They want the biggest challenge, right? Maybe he stays at Davis for 4 years. Heck, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he plays another year there. Maybe this is it and offers come about. We've seen late coaching changes, right? Look at what's happened at Michigan. There was a late coaching change. Penn State just hired Matt Campbell, right? Early last week, maybe it was the week before. Everything gets jumbled up this time of year, but there's always a trickle effect. When somebody gets hired at one of these schools, it trickles all the way down because then guys move, they get their staff, everything else. Things can change. Think now that UC Davis's playoff run just ended, you never know. Schools are going to inquire. That's just the nature of the beast, right? There's a whole bunch of people that are inquiring about FCS quarterbacks, D2 quarterbacks. I think there's a quarterback from West Florida, Division II, that's getting offers from Power Four schools right now, right? That's the way it goes. Some of these, I don't know, you could call it lower levels. It's still the highest level. You're still playing Division I football, D2, D3. You're in a very small percentage, but now with the portal, everything else, the new rules, there could even be this new 5-year thing that they're discussing, talking about. It's going to change things. That maybe more guys start at one level and bounce up to another, right? But then there's also guys that bounce down because of playing time, right? It works in different ways, different cycles. But UC Davis, back to the start of this, they would probably be the first ones to admit Pinnock is good enough, even if he doesn't go right now, to eventually say, hey, he's good enough to play at that next level. And that's Not a bad thing for UC Davis to say and have, right? Sac State, that's a great thing for them to still say Cam Scadaboo started off at Sacramento State and they were the first ones to get on him, right? There is pride, there's a badge of honor. Look what Scadaboo did. He ended up going to Arizona State, being in Heisman conversations, nearly winning a college football playoff game, won a Big 12 championship there, and now in the NFL and was doing great things until that injury there. I'm not sure how long ago that was now. Maybe it was a month ago, 2 months ago, but there's certainly nothing wrong with that. If guys can, it's like any job, right? If as an employer, there's never a bad thing if an employee says and comes to you and says, "Hey, I just got a tremendous opportunity at the next level," right? That's what you want too. You'd love these guys to stay 4 or 5 years, but if they get that opportunity to play at a bigger school, play at Cal, play at Alabama, play at Fresno State, Nevada, wherever it is, nothing wrong with that. It means you've done your job at this level too.
Well, it really is. All right, we're going to sign off. That caps it for football. We will be back next week and throughout the winter as we break down basketball, girls basketball, boys basketball in the Sac-Joaquin section. Great teams, great players, great coaches. We're going to jump all over that and try to shed light on who some of these movers and shakers are and what they're all about. Um, but we're easy to find. Joe Davidson, Sacramento Bee, Chris Jackson, West Coast Preps, Jordan Georgeson of Gold Country Media. Give us a follow on social media. Check us out on the internet. We're trying to shed light on all of this good stuff because we dig it. We hope you dig it. We appreciate the following. For my good friends, we will see you guys real soon. And for our listeners, we appreciate everybody. We appreciate everybody. We appreciate hearing from you. And it's nice to hear that, hey, we listen to you guys in the coach's office, or we listen to you here, or whatever. That's why we do it. We want to have an audience. We like talking to each other, but it's nice to have an audience. So we appreciate everybody's. I appreciate you two guys. We'll see everybody real soon.